The private dining room at Alessandro's was filled with the warm glow of candlelight and the comfortable chatter of 3 generations of the Chin family celebrating Dad's 65th birthday. 25 family members had gathered around the massive oak table, their conversations weaving between discussions of stock portfolios, real estate investments, and whose children had just received promotions at prestigious firms. I sat quietly between Cousin David and Aunt Linda, picking at my ossobuco while my family painted their familiar picture of my life. To them I was Maya Chin, the 30-year-old daughter who had lost her way, after graduating from MIT and choosing to work from her cramped studio apartment instead of accepting the corporate engineering position Dad had secured for her at Boeing. "Robert, you should be so proud of your children's accomplishments," Uncle Paul was saying to my father. Victoria's partnership at the law firm, Michael's promotion to VP at Microsoft, and the twins both getting into medical school. "You've raised an incredibly successful family." Dad beamed with pride, his chest puffing out slightly. At 65, Robert Chin had built Chin Enterprises from a single manufacturing plant into a multinational corporation that employed over 15,000 people. He owned properties across 3 states, had been featured on the cover of Industry Weekly, and expected his children to follow equally impressive trajectories. "Well, most of them anyway," came the cutting voice of my sister Victoria from across the table. At 33, Victoria was Dad's golden child, Harvard Law graduate, senior partner at Morrison & Associates, married to a hedge fund manager, mother to 2 perfectly precocious children who attended exclusive private schools. The table's conversations began to quiet as Victoria's comment drew attention. I felt that familiar knot forming in my stomach, knowing exactly where this was heading. "I mean, let's be honest about Maya's situation," Victoria continued, her voice carrying the authoritative tone she'd perfected in courtrooms. "She's 30 years old, living in a studio apartment, working on what she calls app development, but hasn't shown us a single successful product in 6 years. My brother Michael, 2 years older and Microsoft's youngest VP in the Northwest Division, nodded in agreement. It's actually kind of embarrassing. People at work ask about my family, and I have to explain that my little sister is still trying to figure herself out in the tech world. For 6 years I had maintained an elaborate facade. I lived in a 500-square-foot studio in Capitol Hill, drove a 10-year-old Toyota Corolla, and wore clothes from thrift stores and Target. When family asked about work, I gave vague responses about developing mobile applications and working with startups. They assumed I was struggling to make rent while tinkering with apps that never went anywhere. The truth was vastly different. I was the founder and CEO of Neuralink Dynamics, a quantum computing and artificial intelligence company that had quietly revolutionized how machines processed complex data. Our quantum algorithms could solve in minutes what traditional computers needed months to calculate. We'd developed the neural processing systems that powered everything from autonomous vehicles to advanced medical diagnostics. NASA used our technology to plan Mars missions. The Department of Defense relied on our encryption protocols to protect classified communications. But tonight, like every family gathering for the past 6 years, I was just Maya the disappointment. "The thing that concerns me most," Dad interjected, his voice taking on that parental tone of disappointment I knew so well, "is that Maya seems content with mediocrity. She had every opportunity, full scholarship to MIT, job offers from Apple and Google, a guaranteed position at Boeing with excellent benefits and advancement potential. Instead, Victoria picked up the thread. She chose to throw it all away to sit in her apartment writing code that apparently no one wants to buy." The twins, Cousin Jenny and Cousin Lisa, both recent Harvard graduates working at investment banks, exchanged knowing glances. "Maybe it's a quarter-life crisis thing," Jenny suggested. "Some people take longer to mature into real responsibility." Uncle Paul nodded sagely. "In my day you graduated college and immediately got serious about building a career. This extended adolescence where kids play around with hobbies and call it work. That's a modern phenomenon." I maintained my practiced smile while internally calculating quantum algorithms to keep my temper in check. These family dinners had become exercises in endurance, tests of how much condescension I could absorb while protecting the secret that would change everything. "Maya's always been the dreamer in the family," Aunt Linda added with that sympathetic tone that somehow made everything worse. "Some people are just more artistic, more creative. Not everyone can handle the pressure of traditional success." The conversation was gaining momentum, and I could feel 25 pairs of eyes periodically glancing in my direction. This wasn't just casual family ribbing. This was becoming a full-scale intervention disguised as birthday dinner conversation. Victoria, sensing an opportunity to really drive her point home, stood up with her wine glass. Actually, since we're all here celebrating Dad's incredible achievements, I think this is the perfect time to address Maya's situation directly. My stomach dropped. Victoria was about to turn this into a public spectacle. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria announced to the entire table, her courtroom training evident in how she commanded attention. I want to talk about family responsibility and what it means to honor the sacrifices our parents made for us. The table fell completely silent. Even the birthday celebration seemed to pause as Victoria prepared to deliver what I realized was going to be a devastating public humiliation. Dad built Chin Enterprises from nothing, Victoria continued. He worked 18-hour days, sacrificed family time, took enormous financial risks, all so his children could have opportunities he never had. Michael and I have honored that sacrifice by building serious careers, contributing to society, creating value in the world. She gestured dramatically toward me. And then we have Maya. The silence was deafening. I could hear the grandfather clock in the corner ticking, the soft clink of silverware as someone nervously adjusted their place setting. Meet the family failure, Victoria announced with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. 30 years old, living like a college student, playing around with computer games while the rest of us build real careers and real lives. Cousins David and Lisa actually snickered. Uncle Paul nodded approvingly. Even some of the younger cousins were grinning at Victoria's public takedown. Dad looked uncomfortable but didn't intervene. Mom was studying her hands, clearly embarrassed by the scene Victoria was creating. So here's my proposal. Victoria raised her glass higher. It's time for Maya to grow up. It's time to stop indulging this extended childhood and join the real world. I have contacts at several major law firms that need paralegals. Michael knows people in tech support at Microsoft. It's time to get a real job and start contributing instead of just consuming. The applause that followed was polite but pointed. I sat there, 25 family members staring at me expectantly, waiting to see how I would respond to Victoria's public demolition of my character and my choices. That's exactly when the TV in the corner switched to breaking news. The CNBC logo flashed across the screen, followed by the urgent breaking news banner that always preceded major financial announcements. The anchor's voice cut through the dining room's silence with the authority of someone delivering information that would move markets. Good evening, I'm Sarah Williams with breaking news from Wall Street. In one of the most anticipated IPOs of the decade, quantum computing company Neuralink Dynamics went public today with a stunning $4.2 billion valuation. The table's attention shifted from me to the television screen. I watched as my family's expressions changed from smugness to confusion to dawning shock. The company, founded by 30-year-old CEO Maya Chin, has revolutionized quantum computing applications across multiple industries, the anchor continued. Neuralink Dynamics quantum algorithms are being used by NASA for space exploration planning, by the Department of Defense for cybersecurity applications, and by major hospitals for advanced medical diagnostics. The dining room had gone completely silent. Victoria's wine glass was frozen halfway to her lips. Michael's mouth was hanging open. Dad was gripping the edge of the table so hard his knuckles had turned white. Chen, who has kept an unusually low public profile despite her company's remarkable success, holds a 68% stake in Neuralink Dynamics, making her one of the youngest billionaires in tech history, the anchor explained. The camera cut to footage of the Nasdaq opening bell ceremony from earlier that day. There I was, standing at the podium in a sharp business suit, surrounded by my executive team and board members, ringing the bell that officially launched Neuralink Dynamics as a publicly traded company. The IPO raised $800 million in new capital, which Chin says will be used to expand the company's quantum research division and establish new development centers in Tokyo, London, and Tel Aviv, the anchor continued. Uncle Paul dropped his fork. Cousin Jenny was staring at the screen with her mouth wide open. The twins looked like they'd seen a ghost. In a statement released today, Chin said, "Neuralink Dynamics represents the future of computing. Our quantum systems can solve complex problems in minutes that would take traditional computers decades to process. We're not just changing technology, We're changing what's possible. The news segment continued with analysis from financial experts discussing the significance of the IPO, comparisons to other major tech companies, and speculation about Neuralink Dynamics' future growth potential. Charts showed our stock price climbing steadily throughout the day's trading. Victoria finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "Maya, is that really you on television?" I looked around the table at my family. The same people who had spent 6 years making me feel like a failure, who had just publicly humiliated me in front of 25 relatives. The same people who were now staring at me with expressions of complete shock and something that looked suspiciously like awe. "Yes," I said calmly. "That's me." The silence stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Finally, Dad found his voice. "Maya, I don't understand. How is this possible? You live in that tiny apartment, you drive that old car." "I live modestly because I believe in reinvesting profits into research and development," I explained. Neuralink Dynamics employs over 2,000 engineers, scientists, and researchers across 6 countries. We've invested over $500 million in quantum computing research over the past 4 years. Michael leaned forward, his face pale. "But Maya, you never said anything. You let us think you were struggling to pay rent." "I let you think that because every time I tried to explain quantum computing or artificial intelligence applications, you dismissed it as playing with computer games or app development that would never amount to anything," I replied. "You had already decided that success only looked one way, your way." Victoria was still staring at the television, where the news segment had moved on to interviews with industry analysts discussing the implications of Neuralink Dynamics technology. "It says here that your company has contracts with NASA, the Pentagon, and major hospitals." "That's correct," I confirmed. "Our quantum diagnostic systems can identify cancer markers 18 months before traditional screening methods. Our space exploration algorithms helped plan the current Mars rover mission. Our encryption protocols protect communications for 3 different government agencies." Dad's face had gone through several color changes as he processed this information. "Maya, the news said you're worth," they said, billionaire. "The IPO values my stake at approximately $2.8 billion, I replied matter-of-factly. "But I'm more proud of the fact that we've created technology that saves lives and advances human knowledge." The dining room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. 25 people who had just witnessed what they thought was a family embarrassment had instead seen one of the most dramatic reversals any of them would probably ever experience. "There's something else you should know," I continued, pulling out my phone to show them our company's latest quarterly report. "Neuralink Dynamics has been quietly supporting several family members without you knowing it." I turned to Michael. "When Microsoft was considering layoffs in your division last year, who do you think provided the consulting contract that kept your entire team employed?" "Neuralink Dynamics needed cloud computing infrastructure, and we specifically chose Microsoft because I wanted to protect your job." Michael's face went ashen. "The quantum computing integration project. That was you?" "That was me," I confirmed. "Victoria, when your law firm was struggling to compete with larger practices, who do you think designed your legal technology systems? Your case management software, your client portal, your document automation, all of that was developed by Neuralink Dynamics subsidiary. We did it at cost because I wanted to help you succeed." Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. "The Morrison Legal Technologies contract was me making sure your firm could compete in the modern legal landscape," I finished. I looked around the table at my family members, the same people who had spent the evening making me feel inadequate. "Dad, when Chin Enterprises needed to modernize your manufacturing processes, who do you think developed the AI systems that increased your efficiency by 40%? When you needed quantum encryption for your international communications, who provided that technology? It was Neuralink Dynamics, every time." The weight of these revelations was settling over the table like a heavy blanket. Dad was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of pride, shock, and something that might have been respect. "I've been supporting this family for years," I continued, "not because you asked for help, but because I love you despite the fact that you've spent 6 years telling me I'm a failure." Uncle Paul cleared his throat nervously. "Maya, we owe you an enormous apology. We had no idea." "You had no idea because you never asked," I replied. "You saw the clothes I wore and the apartment I lived in and assumed that meant I was failing. You measured my worth by your standards instead of trying to understand what I was actually building. Victoria was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya, I'm so sorry. What I said tonight was cruel and unfair. I stood up and gathered my purse. I forgive you, Victoria, but I won't continue pretending to be less than I am just to make you comfortable with your assumptions about success. As I prepared to leave, Dad called out, Maya, wait. What happens now? I turned back to address the table one final time. Now you know the truth. Tomorrow I have a company to run, quantum systems to develop, and technologies to create that could change the world. If you're interested in learning about what I actually do, in understanding the work we're doing to advance human knowledge and capability, then we can have real conversations. I walked toward the restaurant exit, leaving behind the shocked silence of my family and the CNBC news segment still playing on the television. Outside, my driver was waiting with the Tesla Model S I actually drove when I wasn't maintaining my cover story. Some failures, it turns out, are just successes that nobody bothered to understand.